So I'm wondering, I don't think that list has any real significance of why they're knocking down the regiment or Columbus. I mean, Columbus maybe, because people kind of know who he is. But for the most part, it seems
they
like
don't know who these people are.
They don't know who these people are.
And the way you know that is they're doing it to all black regiments. They're
Right.
doing it to abolitionists.
They're doing it to human figures, right?
Right.
And so if you say, and there's a little video, I think it must be from London, or no, maybe it's from Oxford, and they're asking, do you know who Rhodes is? Right, you want to take his statue down, and
do you know who he is, when he lived, anything about him?
They don't care.
No, they don't. They don't care.
They have no, and so it's not even damnatio memoriae, because they don't have any memory of any of these people in the first place. There's some kind of an attack on the desire to represent the human form.
I see, because in some way that is a celebration of a particular group of people they don't like, or can you unpack that a little bit more?
Well, see, if they were, that you included images that are not racially, sort of marked.
Charged or in any way, yes.
It's like they're taking down statues of black Americans as well as white Americans.
Yes.
How is it racial anymore? It's an iconoclasm of the oldest kind of sense, which is taking away the power of the representation of, I don't know what, medieval religious art is always taking the idea that you can somehow represent the transcendent through the physical.
Yes.
Right, so that you have the statues of the saints, or the crucifixes, or the devotional images of Mary, and they're not meant to be worshipped of themselves, right? They don't have power inside them. But they do have a power because they're trying to point you to something that's transcendent and beautiful and true, that is...
And that's what the attack is based on, because each of these statues, isn't it, is sort of gesturing at some kind of heroic ideal.
Right.
Whether it is courage, forbearance, nobility, enlightenment, whether it is even some form of political aspirational virtue, like being an abolitionist.
Well, that you have a statue made of you means that you've done something virtuous that the community thought was worth honoring.
So is what you're saying that this is more of an attack on the idea of aspirational value at all? Yes. Rather than the values of any particular person?
They don't seem to be. I mean, I hadn't thought about it until you read that list out, but that is not an attack on... It's not directly an attack on the history, because they don't know the history in the first place.
And this makes sense, doesn't it? If these people are Marxists, it makes sense that they would be doing this.
Right.
Because if you think about it in terms of Marxists wanting to create a utopia on Earth, of the facelessness of the communist state, which, doesn't really permit for individual heroes, only perhaps for the dear leader and then all the rest, all the rest of the ants in the colony, right? There's a queen and then the ants, whatever. The particular kind of funless, anodyne, sort of, banality and dullness of communism, of Marxism, it stands to reason that they would want to remove these symbols of defiant, heroic, individualistic, historical understanding, right?
Yes.
And people.
And, I mean, also just the artistic style. Based on the list that you gave, most of those were probably done, if they're done at the turn of the 20th century, they're still in a more...
fairly classical style.
Classical, realistic, maybe ornamented in some way. They're not, it doesn't sound like they're tearing down Henry Moore's or...
They're not tearing down any of the things that all of your taxpayer money's been spent on. These, $500,000... big balls or whatever outside of...
I want to know whether they're going after New Deal, sort of...
FDR.
FDR art.
No, they're not. It's interesting you say that as an example of looking at this kind of thing through... Because this conversation really is about looking at things through the wrong lens.
Yes.
From the wrong... initial position. And I saw a tweet from somebody who is usually very intelligent, Dinesh D'Souza, who said, oh, well, if they're going to take down these statues of, Churchill and the rest of it, we should do it with theirs. We should do FDR and, all the rest of it. It's like if, they got to, have their cake and eat too. And it just seemed to me to be such a profound misunderstanding of what was happening. Like anybody out there on the streets cares any more about Democrat politicians from the past than they do about Republicans.
Right, they don't.
It was a very unusually boneheaded thing for Dinesh to say, based on, I think, on a profound misunderstanding of what's going on, because he's locked into this this political left-right thing, which you're saying is not really what's going on at all.
No, because I mean that political left-right thing.
This isn't really
one,
about
it
Democrats and Republicans.
No, it does. The political left-right thing, one, requires knowing all those players, right?
And none of the people on the street do.
None of the people on the street do. They don't care. They don't care about, policy arguments and politics, right? What's happening is it's at this. I mean, it's funny to say they're statues at a visceral level, right? Because they don't have viscera, but that they do have viscera to the people that are tearing them down because they have something that is animate in them. And so it's like we started with the Damnatio Memoriae, which I hadn't thought about properly, that classical statues all have some kind of, I mean, they have power in their beauty, but they also have power in the sort of ability of art to represent something so potentially alive. Maybe that's it, right? The stuff that nobody's tearing down things that don't look like they're alive. They're tearing down
recognizably heroic actual people.
Right. And so it wouldn't
Whatever
matter
they
who
look
they
like.
are. It doesn't matter who they are. They're tearing down some kind of sense of, and I'm trying to get this, it's an attack on Western civilization, but that doesn't really mean anything. Right? It's an attack on, I'd say it's an attack on civilization itself, on the sort of ability of human beings to create beautiful structures and communities and cities